Have you ever experienced a place that makes you so uncomfortable that you avoid it at all costs, but at the same time it draws you into it? There's this forest in my hometown that my parents used to take me camping in as a kid. I loved camping for the most part. When we camped out by this little beach or over in Tennessee, it was fun, but as far as I can remember, anytime we went to camp in this forest, it was dreadful. I remember as a kid being really scared and nervous when we were there, and my parents just tried to assure me that it was because the trees were really tall. They weren't wrong about the trees, though. I don't know what kind of trees they were, but they were extremely tall and thin with even thinner branches that all curved straight upward. And because the trees were so slim, though, there were a lot more of them. And looking straight up, it seemed to be overwhelming. Again, as a kid, I just believed this because my parents were adults and smart, right? So that must have been the truth. I tried to reason with myself, but it would never go away. I always felt like they were watching me or targeting me, and if I wasn't looking at them, they would engulf me or something like that. I know, I sound crazy or just very imaginative for a child, but I really felt like I was in danger. Obviously, I didn't have fun when we went here. I hardly slept. I worried I would be taken. I was afraid to go swimming in the nearby stream or river or whatever it was. I would fish with my dad, that way I was near someone, in case I was drawn into the water or something, but I wouldn't ever do anything alone. Then, as I got older, I expected this irrational fear to fade, but it got worse. I started getting physically ill or dizzy while I was up there. I remember one time I helped my dad set up our tents, and then went in and tried to sleep, but I kept feeling like I was being rocked, like what I would imagine it would feel like as an infant. To make it worse, it would fade about an hour after we left, so my parents would think that I was faking it. It pretty much ruined camping for me, because that was typically where we camped, so I would try to suggest another place, or I would end up faking feeling ill for a day or two before, just to try to get out of it. Sometimes it worked, and I would be left at my grandparents' house, but not every time. Thankfully, I got older and was no longer required to go on these miserable attempts of family time. My parents split up, though they were never actually married, and I lived with my mom, but was never required to go over to my dad's. So, if he went camping and I was going to be there, I was typically busy that weekend. Many years later, I'm an adult, living on my own, and I just recently moved back in with my mom. I started getting into a few subreddits about paranormal and unexplained events, and it made me think of this forest. I started talking to people about it, and one of the most common questions I got was if I had gone back as an adult. And of course, at first I thought, well, hell no. But then again, I was trying to be reasonable and tell myself that it had to just be a fear. A lot of people wanted me to return with a camera to see if I could catch anything on film. I didn't have anything going on as I was between jobs, which is why I actually moved back home, so why not go and see if I really was a paranoid kid or if I'm about to go viral? So, I headed out with probably too many safety items, including a radio, my phone, a battery bank, a first aid kit, a pocket knife, and other things that I don't remember, as well as my crappy old GoPro that I got cheap from a yard sale. I strapped it to my head so I could get everything that I was seeing too. The battery was supposed to last about 8 hours, and I wasn't planning on being there for more than an hour, so I figured I would be set. I pulled into the parking lot and texted my mom and a friend to let them know where I was, in case I didn't come home, and I headed in. As I got maybe a foot or two in, the sinking feeling immediately hit me. It felt like you just ran into something that you didn't like for the first time in years, and you knew that it wasn't going to end well. I took a deep breath and I continued in. I checked my phone and noticed that it was around noon at the time. Then, the feeling started to get worse. The air seemed thick and heavy, but it didn't feel like it was humid, beside the fact that the humidity had been low that day. Then, that feeling of being watched came back. I looked all around, and I saw no one or nothing that could possibly have been watching me. I even called out if someone was nearby, and there was no answer. In fact, it was dead silent. There wasn't even a crunching of leaves or sticks on the ground, that slight swaying of trees, or even the sounds of squirrels. Stupidly, I continued in, though, to find the area we always camped at. I remembered and studied the path to make sure that I knew how to get out, in case anything happened to me or my parents, but when I got there, the only trace left was the rocky area leading down to the water where we used to fish. It seemed like there were even new trees that were growing where we would set up our tents. As I started explaining this to the camera, I started getting disoriented, and I mentioned this. That's when the overwhelming sense of dread came. I still heard nothing. I saw nothing other than the trees, but it seemed to fall even more silent. I couldn't even hear the water rushing nearby. I didn't want to pass out in here, never knowing what could happen to me, so I started making my way out. As I started walking back, I looked at my phone and noticed that it was about 12:40. Knowing that it took me about 30 minutes to walk back, as I looked around, I expected to be back out at 1:30 at the latest. Knowing that I was walking faster, I kind of expected to be out sooner. However, as I started walking back, I again started to feel like something was watching or following me. Then the feeling grew even worse, and I finally broke into a sprint to get out of there. After what felt like forever, I made it back to the entrance, ran past the older couple that was taking pictures, and I hopped into my car, locking the door. As I sat there, trying to compose myself, I noticed that the sky was a pink and orange color and that the sun was setting. I thought this wasn't possible, since it would have only have been around 2 p.m. when I pulled out my phone and noticed it was nearly 6. I had lost 6 hours. And that's when I noticed I had several missed calls and texts from both my mom and my friend. My friend knew how I felt about these woods, so they tried to make sure that I was all right. I know that I didn't get the best reception there, but I had missed text in between 1 to 6 p.m. since I had been out. I turned on my car, and the clock on it also confirmed that it was around 6. I still have no explanation as to how I lost so much time. To add to my fears of this place, I went home, passed out, and I checked the footage the next day. To my surprise, or rather my confusion, the battery was dead, and there was only about 2 or 3 hours of footage on it. It all started as I remembered it, walking to the camp area, talking to myself. I walked up to the water, and then as I was talking about where we camped, the video seemed to cut in and out, and then it was just horrible static with a bad grainy video of these trees. It was like that for most of the video, until it came back to me talking about leaving and running back. How could there be so much time of just trees, but then cut right back to the video like there was no time missed? It was like this footage was added to it almost. So I have the video showing I was there for 2 to 3 hours, but according to my phone and car, I was in there for nearly 6. I showed my friend, and they thought it was creepy as well, but now, several years later, I honestly can't find where I kept or saved the footage, and that GoPro was stolen, so unfortunately, all I have are these unwanted memories of this place. I still don't know what to make of it, and if anyone has any ideas, I am more than willing to listen. I don't know if there's some kind of spirit there, or if it truly is those trees, but I think I got lucky on that last visit, and therefore, no matter what, I will never be going back.